Steve, episode 47 of the Broadway block. Rangers finally got the Kakko deal done. Are you happy with the number, the length of the contract, and what's left in offseason for us?
Length specifically, 2 years is just enough time, I feel like, for us to see what we have. I think we have a pretty good clue, but after this year, let's say he has a 25 to 30 goal season, and then going into next year, can he keep that up? I think that would warrant another extension. If he doesn't really hit those marks, I feel like you kind of either have to move on or you have to either elevate him in such a role that he's playing so many minutes where you really see what he has the next season. So, barring any disappointments, I feel like this lends itself to a nice, healthy contract when he is of age for that. As far as the cap purposes, we don't really have too much more to spend there, so it all came into about correctly, and I think we were projecting in the two million range, so it's about on par. But what do you think about it? I mean, obviously, it's a must move, right? Like we have to sign him.
I think you have to sign it as being a number two pick. And, for the Kako supporters out there, I'm with you. Two different regimes, coach, everything, COVID seasons. So they're shortened seasons, even though we count them as real regular seasons, not playing all those games and a couple nagging injuries. We all know American hockey is hard to translate to when you get over here. So I think this year, like you said, is going to be a good sign to see. Like, does he have 25 goals, close to 30? Is he really boosting that kid line? Is he fitting in on every line? Like, that's what we will see. My only concern is same way you mentioned, like, what happens if he's like, we're halfway through the season, he's at 6 goals, 7 assists. Like, are we going to say the Kako experiment is done and trade him at the deadline if there's someone there? Like, let's say we're having the winning season like we are last year, where we're competing for the a spot in the Metropolitan. Do we trade him to just kind of get that cup window for the rest of the younger guys? Or are we just going to ride the Kako experiment out because he's only on a 2-year, $4.2 million contract? So I think that's time will tell for that. Other than that, what do you think? Which prospect do you think is going to make the team? There's spots available.
Well, I think to expand on what you said, I mean, like moving on from the pick would be tough, I think, for the fan base to swallow. So I think they're gonna try to do everything they can. And also the guy's still really young. You have to give him a chance, but it is already, I think, disheartening for a good part of the fan base that we haven't seen that immediate boost. Um, Prospect most likely to make the team, it's probably got to be Kraftstoff, but as maybe more likely to be called up is maybe more like a Cooley or somebody like that. I'm actually not too sure on the contract specifics, but I believe Othman is not on the table for at the moment. It would just require more to get them onto an AHL contract for them to be called up. But I think we can look forward to the roster looking the way it is. Injuries are going to be really disappointing for this team, and it's going to prove our depth down the line of what we have really in the AHL at the moment. So, healthy wise, we're looking at, our top six is pretty cemented. Either a combination of that kid line or whomever is off of the kid line onto the top lines remains to be seen. But I would almost say that Kravi is a lock for that X factor, dark horse kind of role to probably make the team and hopefully have an impactful role, because at his price point, I mean, if he can adequately replace production wise somebody like a Vetrano, I mean, that would be one of the biggest, I think, talking points of this season.
I agree with that. I think yeah, it would be between Cooley and Kravi too, because I think Othman, like we said previously, like would not be AHL eligible based on his age. So I don't think he's gonna get that. I think maybe he'll come to camp, but I think he'll be back with the Spitfire. But I believe the Rangers will be the final deciding point on where he goes. I think you wouldn't have brought Kravi back over. You wouldn't have kept him in the mix. You wouldn't have let the trade drama last year cool down if you didn't think this guy was going to be worth it. I don't think he's going to the AHL. I think it's Kravi. If you ain't good enough, then that's on you. Because we're fully here. We need somebody like that. I like his style of play, finesse work. He works the wing really well. he opens up a lot of the slots for people by drawing the defenders in on him and then leaving him, a man open. So it should be exciting to see that. But I also think you are correct when you say that, like, a big injury could really hurt. Like, someone like Zebs, Kreider with an injury, like that would be, could really diminish our playoff hopes. I like where the team's headed. It's just like you've mentioned it before. We are in the first window for, making a chance at a cup with the younger guys. So I think we have to, keep Kakko around. And like, if he's not the guy, he's not the guy. Another thing to bring up is like, it's not like he's our only top 3 draft pick, which would make things a little easier if, like, let's say he does have to be traded and Laugh is just a point a game player. He's opening up the wing. He's playing on the top power play line. I think that would make the rest of the fan base feel better. Like, okay, well, we don't get a lot of, top 3 picks. So at least, we're 1 for 2 on them.
It would take this thing off a little bit, but I think also too, like you have to think like Lias Anderson, Kravi's in that kind of boat of now how many top tens would this be that are kind of looked at in a bad light. So we can already call one, I would say, barring a 60-point season from Lias Anderson in some believe he's still with the Kings. Then we can call that one a wash. And Kravi is in the same ilk as far as it remains to be seen. I would say that he projects higher, but maybe that's my own, trying to paint a rosy picture, because some of those highlights, man, are great, but can you do it on an NHL surface? And who knows? Maybe he finds some connection with somebody like Panarin, and don't forget the amount of folks just between Kreider speaking as many languages. There's enough infrastructure, I feel like, to make this guy comfortable. But who knows as far as what bridges have been burned, and maybe he's just really trying to show that he can play at an NHL level to get out of here.
And be a professional, because that's contract aside, like, there's still the professional aspect. Like, you can't just hold out. This isn't the NBA where you're just like, I'll sign a contract. Oh, things didn't go my way. Like, like I think he also has to prove to the rest of the NHL that he is not a Lias Anderson where he's just going to kind of diminish off into the sunset. So barring injuries, prospects, do you think we're still at the top 2 of the Metropolitan next year, Steve?
Well, so the Metropolitan's going to be a little weird. Second place, I don't think would be at all a leap. We overperformed, sure, but I feel like where we're at compared to the teams that would compete for that, let's think about it. So we got the Capitals and the Penguins as probably the perennials, right? I would say that we're on paper ahead of both of them. The Penguins are a much older club. I don't think that the Capitals have gotten much better. They kind of have always been in a cap issue, so they're always, puns aside, they're always in a situation where there's really a limited option of things that they can move in and out until they decide to call it. And until Ovechkin hangs it up, they're probably not calling it. So that's just my opinion.
Why would you? Why would you? With the amount of
Right.
goals that guy scored, I would keep
Right.
trying to put a team around him until he couldn't do it anyway.
Yeah, it's not a bad strat. And and they got
The
Carlson.
Pens didn't do that much. I think they just kind of re-signed their people.
They swapped out a couple defensemen. Gone is Joe Marino to the Devils, or John Marino. I don't give a shit. That dude, and like a goalie signing. So they're basically the same club. So then we have those. I would say that those are the 4. You put the Hurricanes in the obvious spot as the previous Eastern Conference. They probably only got better. I mean,
Yeah, that's
not
what
to say that.
everywhere I've been reading, everyone's been really thrilled with the Canes offseason. Do
Well,
you think
being
they
able to
did
keep
that much?
everything. I'm sorry.
Do you think they did that much to tweak their
Being,
roster?
being able to keep everything and get the replacement to Trocheck, I mean, that's a huge hole that would have been in their lineup, and to get Patch ready for essentially nothing is crazy. So they're probably, and I would say Pacioretty has more of the offensive touch, which Trocheck has more of that two-way touch. So
Do you think Brent Burns is an upgrade from D'Angelo?
I don't,
Where he is in his
but
NHL career?
but I do think that it is obvious that D'Angelo is, you know, as much as the Hurricanes are probably not vocal about it, there's a reason that they didn't choose to bring him back. In my opinion, I feel like that it's just obvious in what
Too much of a
your
distraction.
actions speak louder than your words, and the Hurricanes said bye. So, um, Brent Burns in replacement, yeah, maybe he puts the puck on the net. I think again the Pacioretty is really my focus because they have a lot of playmaking ability, and Pacioretty is a real sniper. So um, that will be scary to see if
What
that
was
clicks.
Vegas thinking giving that up?
They're just in cap hell. We could
Yeah.
talk about maybe the West Coast, the Pacific Division, and another little breakdown. But I think that's the top four. No, and then who out of the bottom four do you think makes the most prolific jump this year? Because the Isles now are, don't forget the 2 seasons the season they had 2 seasons ago and the season before that. They've, are now without Trotz behind the bench. They essentially got worse in the Devon trade, Taves deal for 2 picks, and then trading the first for Romanov. So we'll see what happens with how well they can bounce back. We were talking before we started about the rumor of Kadri
Audrey,
perhaps.
may that could be like what they were waiting on all summer. Lou Amorello just waiting on the pieces the set and his market value to go down a little bit. But I just age is against them. Time is against them. Like those guys, like how long is Barzell gonna be like before he pulls a Trocheck and be like, I don't want to be on the Islanders anymore.
Well, before he also is
Too old.
demands to kind of be paid also, and starts to get older and not be on a good team for a while. But I can't speak to, actually Barzell recently said that he wanted to be an Islander for his career. So we'll see
Well,
how
many Islanders have said that
Tavares said the
before.
same
I
thing.
don't want to insult any Islanders fans. Maybe Toronto wants to talk about that, but
Yeah, I think Tavares said the same thing.
he said
Um,
it for his whole career. I want to be finished here as an Islander.
so who do you think has gotten the best out of those bottom four? Because I would say that Columbus adding Johnny Gaudreau. I mean, nobody's added a guy of that probably in the whole Eastern Conference. So, um, minus the Florida deal, which you can argue they got, maybe just equal on paper, if not worse. Um, but obviously in a separate division. So out of us, I would say that in our division they probably got the best, the Blue Jackets, but they're also still a pretty, I would call it a
Raw,
free, yeah,
raw.
pretty raw team. And I mean, Line and Goudreau, I mean, you got
That's
the
scary.
sniper.
That's scary.
That could be really really deadly fantasy, heads up for anybody who's listening. And then I would say the Phillies are maybe worse. Or sorry, the Flyers. And then Philly is Philly worse than New Jersey? Probably. And is Columbus worse than Philly? I guess is really where I stand, because I would probably put, as weird as this is to say, I would probably put New Jersey ahead of all of those guys.
I
And
don't know. I don't know because here's the thing. They can't prove those guys that, Nico and Jack Hughes, like they gave him that contract. Like, yeah, he shows spurts of like, yeah, why he should be the number one. He was the number one pick. But can they put it together? Can they have the defenders? Is Blackwood ready to be that number one? Like, obviously they brought in Vanek, right?
oh, that's a good question. I
Yeah, I
think they
can't
did.
remember if it was Samsonov or Vanek, but they brought in one of the old Caps guys, which I'm like, all right, I guess it's an upgrade, but the Caps got better at goaltending because they realized we have mediocre goaltending. So what do the Devils do? They get the scraps of the Caps mediocre goaltending, which I guess is an upgrade if Blackwood's not going to be the guy. You got someone semi back there, but like Vanek couldn't be the guy all night and Samsonov could. Back to fantasy watching that.
Yeah.
Um, but like Palat is a blue collar player. He plays better with better people on his line. So like, are the Devils going to make him better, or are we just going to watch Palat's career just go down? So for me, I would rank it Philly, Devs, Columbus, Islanders.
And we'll see. I mean, I think the Isles make the biggest pushback compared to their history. I would say who has
Well, there's
gotten
only
better.
going up from what did they lose like 10 games there that first stretch
Yeah,
at the beginning of the season?
yeah. I would rank them fifth in the Metro under the Caps and the Caps and the Penguins kind of sandwich them out of a playoff role. Um, and I would put the Cellar Dwellers probably as, even though Columbus is going to be fun to watch and score some games, they're probably going to get outscored in more games than they score. So we'll put them probably there. Um, and I feel like the Islanders will push for that spot, but and Jersey will have some meaningful games, but they'll also finish sixth, I would say.
Agree. You never know. That's the best part about hockey. You put what you can down on paper, and it's really do the boys step up? Do they? Who did the
Um,
Islanders hire as their coach?
Never fucking heard of him. We'll see what happens. I think that's that's one of the moves that I, and like who knows? I mean, right? Like we watch a lot more Rangers games than we watch Islanders games, but let's give it 10% that it's not a completely terrible move. But if you're gonna make any changes, I feel like Trotz was. I even was telling my friend who's an Islanders fan, I was like, man, I hope they just don't do anything stupid and fire Trotz. He's like, oh, me neither. And I mean, coming from an Islanders fan, thinking that the coach isn't the fucking problem, I mean, that's always disheartening when you're like, oh no, there's just an organizational disconnect the whole way through, which is great for Rangers fans, but obviously bad for them. But
The
we'll wait
only
till the season.
counter I could say on that is that, like they were that close to getting to the cup. So like when they didn't started going on that streak of bad, like like you said, I don't watch enough Islanders games. Did they just stay consistent? Like this is the plan, we're sticking with it, and there was no line changes. We don't really know, so because we didn't watch them day in day out. So like, is that what Lou Amorello was thinking? Like, okay, we just did. It wasn't good enough to get us to the final. It just got us a losing season. Like this guy's not doing anything else different. Like, was that the problem? Oh, time to
The
see.
the AV sort of effect where, no change is fine when you bounce back, but no change isn't fine when there's no bounce.
When nothing's happening.
Yeah. And I think that's what Rangers fans got accustomed to in those deep playoff runs is, hey, listen, don't rock the boat because this is what we went with. It worked. And then, when you're starting to lose and you're like, don't rock the boat, it's like, well, how many times can we lose? But it's always
I
a pleasure, my friend.
real quick before we go, I don't. Someone's got to do an NHL films on like this Philadelphia Flyers season that's going to be happening with Tortorella, D'Angelo. I read somewhere they got the guy from the Blues that took off his shirt mid game to yell at the ref about some stupid call. Like the cast of characters they may suck, but they could provide some pretty like a good entertainment value there.
I mean, let's hope for another 9-0 complete blowout. I mean, at what point do you kind of, don't forget Rasmus Ristolainen. There's been some really questionable signings by this club, so we'll see what happens. But talk to you soon, brother.
All right, thanks, Steve. Have a great one. Let's go Rangers.
Let's go Rangers.